Hey, it's Ross Payton with Roleplaying Public Radio. This is RPPR episode 164, Railroading Off the Cliff. We're going to be talking about railroading in games, why it's not fun, and how to avoid it, and that kind of stuff. So, yeah, it's going to be a fun episode. With me tonight as guests are Bill and David.
Nice to be here.
Yep.
Same.
All right. We have a bit of news first, actually. First off, we have a new type of show on the RPPR Patreon, Mashup Mayhem, where we're taking different things and adding them together in RPG settings. So in our latest episode, we had Aliens, Predator, and Cthulhu. Yeah, exactly. Our first episode had D&D and wrestling. So that seemed, Bill's nodding in approval. So if you like our RPPR Patreon, check it out. And I'll be posting little preview clips. I've been posting preview clips on the social media, Twitter and Facebook and all that. So yeah.
Yes, I think I've heard a few of them on the Book of Faces.
The Book of Faces. Yep. That's what it's called in the grimdark future, which we are hurtling towards rapidly. Again,
So
just
true.
Silent.
So very true.
Yeah. In less good news, but I think it's important to announce it. This is sort of a bit of industry news, tabletop RPG industry news. A game designer by the name of Zach S. He is a writer in the OSR community. He's done a lot of retro clone fantasy RPG stuff. Has been accused of assault, sexual assault, and abuse by 4 separate women. I'm going to link to 2 of their stories. His Mandy Morbid and Vivica Gray, who have, content warning, these are very graphic, very brutal stories, and I believe their allegations. So as a public service announcement, I just want to recommend no one buy or read Zach S's products. The tabletop industry, like every other industry in the world right now, seems to have problems with
Treating
people.
women like they're humans?
yes. It's called, a lot of people call it the broken stairs theory, where there are some people who are broken stairs that, if you know about them, you avoid them. But the idea is a lot of people don't know about them and get hurt. And so Zach S is a broken stair. So
That's not the phrase I would use to describe the man, but
Right.
I'm a little bit too genteel to say it aloud.
he's already been kicked off of Drive-Thru RPG and Indie Press Revolution. And this is a developing story. So, if you go on Twitter, I'm sure you can read a lot more about it. But
On the other hand, that does involve going on Twitter.
yeah. So, this is just a sort of announcement. Anyways, we should, I'll have links to their stories in the show notes, and, I'm sure there will be a lot more, coverage on this in the coming days and weeks. So definitely avoid his stuff. Anyway, let's move on to our show topic, which is, of course, railroading. This came up as sort of a discussion in RP. I think it was Rain. We sort of mentioned, we're railroading off the cliff or something like that.
Yeah, there's sometimes when players leap off the railroad and take the engine off a cliff.
Yeah.
It's the case of we need to go to this logical conclusion, and then everybody else or the group somehow decides to go the opposite way or perpendicular to it and somehow go exactly opposite the goal that you're planning. And how do you deal with that?
Yeah. So first off, we kind of have to define what is railroading, and then where do you draw the line? Because a lot of people, it's kind of one of those, I know it when I see it sort of situations, but a lot of people think that only GMs can railroad. And I don't think that's true. I think players can railroad a group,
yes.
Particularly very sort of, I wouldn't say strong willed, but kind of obnoxious players who ignore a lot of social cues, can railroad a group into an unwanted direction. And railroading isn't just about plot. It's not like we're avoiding the quest, we're avoiding the mission. It can also be about theme. Players can very easily change one person at the table. Any player or GM can sort of change what the theme is of a game, And this things like tone, atmosphere, sort of motifs, and just kind of like unilaterally change it to something else. And then like you thought you were playing this, but now it's this, and now no one's having a good time
Bamboozled
again. If you
How did we end up in Fraggle Rock?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we have a term for it. Yeah, a bit of a in joke in RPPR when Caleb was trying to run a very serious kind of grim game about post-apocalyptic economics, red markets, and we started naming our characters and group after characters in Fraggle Rock, I think it was actually it wasn't even necessarily Fraggle Rock. It was the Muppet
I think
Show.
we started it with Dr. Teeth.
Yes, I did.
And we decided to go for naming our group after members of Electric Mayhem.
Yeah. And Caleb didn't like that shift in tone. So we were kind of railroading Caleb away from what he wanted to do. But I mean,
I still maintain that that's embracing the like sort of sinister edge of the Muppets that was always present in the original Muppet Show cast. But I digress.
I mean, that's kind of the thing, isn't it? That's sort of the core of the thing. It's like railroading is a very subjective thing. And when you feel like you're being railroaded at the table, no matter whether you're a player or a GM, it sucks. And then, but other people don't have the same perception as you necessarily. So like, I mean, how do you first define it? Like, Bill, what do you think? How do you define railroading?
Oh boy.
Yeah.
So, okay. That's sort of interesting because, as regular listeners might, know, I sort of try to do my research and like essentially where I'm going with that is I spent a lot of time like in my younger days as GM, like worrying about what railroading is and sort of like ending up in these sort of aimless and formless scenarios. Because it's like, I don't want to put any restrictions down. And like, even trying to nudge people in the direction of a plot can
you feel
still
like a tyrant.
count as railroading.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's tough to like sit in the GM chair and have all that phenomenal cosmic power and, not feel like everything you do is pushing the group in the direction of something.
And depending on your group, you're either herding weasels or herding cats. And sometimes it's easy enough. You shine the laser pointer in the right spot and you get them to come the right way. But I made a lot of early mistakes where I would write out the entire adventure path. I'm old enough to remember that one of the first games that I picked up was a Dark Sun boxed set. And it came with adventure flip books to it. And it said, well, if your players decide to do A, turn to page 3. If your players decide to do B, turn to page 4. And
your players chose to do Lilac?
Yes, my players chose Lilac, and we went off the printed page rather quickly. And some of those adventure paths were handy to have, and I've still got a few of them packed away, mostly for encounters, because I think that some of the encounters in there were very well written. But to move from page A to page B to page C doesn't always work because your players are people. And sometimes when you say, well, you can go for this or you can go for that, they're not going to go for this or that. They're going to go for the other thing.
I just want to interrupt because Rob Sykes from the Orpheus Protocol.
Hello.
Has actually, he drove all the way to Springfield just to be in this episode. Well, actually,
which is really impressive considering we only got it scheduled an hour or two ago.
Yeah, no, he's here for the weekend to do
driving?
multiple podcasts.
Well, I was actually driving extremely fast, but that's neither here nor there. Yes, hello, everybody. I'm Rob Stith from the Orpheus Protocol. I'm here for a couple
Multiple
days
podcasts.
to do all
Yeah.
kinds of podcasting and nonsense.
Yeah. So yeah, we're talking about railroading, and David talked a little bit about it, defining it and all that. Bill, did you get a chance to do that? But
Yeah. I started in and sort of rambled around for a minute.
Yeah, that's a good podcast. So Rob, what do you think railroading is?
That's an interesting question. Obviously, there's a lot of debate about what the definition of railroading is.
Yeah.
My definition is probably pretty narrow, I would say. A lot of things that maybe, well, certainly people on Reddit or something would say, oh, that's railroading, or be worried about it being railroading. I'd be like, yeah, it's fucking fine.
Right, but what do actual humans think?
Thank you. I think that to truly railroad, you kind of need to just, as a GM, be negatively reactive to what the player wants.
Okay.
For example, I would not call it railroading if you have a linear plot and there's like more or less the beats written out, and then you take what the players are doing and find a logical, flowing in the story way of getting to one of the points further down the line, even if you skip a few. It'll all end up in the same place, whatever. And there's, of course, also the trick of the players, if they have a good relationship with the GM, if there's a social contract going on, will generally interact with the most interesting thing that you put in front of them, which more or less lets you do a tunnel of fun style linear plot if you want to. A lot of the stuff where they're trying to go off and like, I just want to bake pancakes instead of doing adventures in the dungeon. Like, that's usually because the relationship isn't there one way or another. But I think you kind of have to be like, no, you're not allowed, you can't make a roll for that, or no, that is not a way that you could possibly do that. And like asking clarifying questions about player intent where they're about to do something really crazy that's going to get them killed or something. I would not call that railroading, but if you're just like, no, not only are
setting
we doing
some kind of limits.
not only are we doing my linear plot, we are doing every step along this track in the order that I want them.
You may roll the search check now.
Yeah, and the way that we get from point A to point B to point C is already predetermined.
Yeah.
And I literally have heard actual play podcasts with Patreons that do that.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, my definition of railroading is probably not very useful because it's very extreme. But that is because I've seen ways of using almost any other kind of negotiation or suggestiveness from the GM's part toward the story and the players work out well and in a collaborative way. So and I guess it's just because railroading has such a dark connotation that I don't want to call anything that doesn't suck railroading.
Well, and truth be told, if you give your players the two different options, it's okay, you can go with this caravan or you can check out the oasis. If they say, I want to go run screaming into the desert, well, if you go run screaming into the desert, you're going to die. Well, you're not letting me have any choice. That's railroading. No, that's logic. That's basic.
Yeah, I mean,
logic.
setting limits, like saying, like, I want to jump off the cliff. Well, you'll die. Like, well, now you're railroading me because I can't jump off the cliff.
Okay, fine.
Falling damage exists in this game,
So jump off the cliff, and you died.
Yeah.
Now, here is a piece of paper. Make your new character, and we'll pick you up at the next logical spot to shoehorn you in, like right now.
You see, I see that what you're describing is definitely a railroading to me. But for me, what I'm thinking about now is that I think anyone at the table can railroad, even players, because that player is kind of railroading because he's saying, I want to now go in the desert. I want the game to be about that. And now the game is now about this player not agreeing to the premise and taking everybody along with them.
Make it the me show.
Yeah, make it the me show. And there's this kind of disagreement, and the game can't really proceed until we deal with this digression off into the desert. And there's also aside from plot railroading, which you're describing, A to B to C in this exact way. There's also, I think, sort of tone railroading, which is like, I'm doing a serious game. Well, I'm playing Sir Nee, and I'm quoting Monty Python the entire time, and
Waka.
Yeah, exactly. Or as an RPPR calls it, Fraggle Rocking. So, I mean, maybe I'm being too loose in defining railroading.
No, I like it.
Yeah.
I like it actually because in both of these instances, what you've sort of described, and this is brilliant, Ross. I'm going to use this from now on. In both of those cases, someone at the table is cutting the other people at the table out of the possibility space for what's going on.
Oh, yeah.
More or less, either you could do it, as you said, with tone. The GM can obviously do it by denying what the player's trying to engage with. But a player can also do it in like the classic rogue problem way. If they go off on a like sub scene or a scene that only they can interact with, and they deny the social contract and like keep it going and going and going and going and going and like don't try to make active efforts to bring it back to where the other people can fucking have some fun.
Yeah.
So like I do think that you've sort of stumbled on an almost elemental factor that leads to railroading, which is stopping the other people from being able to do what they want to do.
But Rob, I mean, haven't you ever played Magic the Gathering? Fun is a zero-sum game. The more of it I have, by the very nature, the less of it you're going to have.
My definition of a zero-sum game in that case is the more Magic cards you buy, the closer your level of fun approaches zero.
Wow.
I mean,
that's
also true, but
oh, man.
Fair.
there's a reason I only play limited.
I also enjoy limited more. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, David. Yeah.
Well, and I've got to say, sometimes those player instances where the group kind of has a decision and they all decide to go off into the desert, those can still be fun. And it's up to me as a DM to roll with it. I was running a variation on Tom's There's Monsters in the City game. And when I set it up for all of the players, they distrusted everybody who had an altruistic outlook. And they decided to go with the ne'er-do-wells. And so I kind of had to shift the focus, kind of like going from the L to the subway, where they decided, oh no, the priestess who is gauche to always tell the truth, who is telling us that she's trying to save the city, we don't trust her. But on the other hand, that lich who is raising an army of undead in the underground of the city, he seems trustworthy.
Seems like an upstanding gentleman.
Well, I mean, he's evil as can be, but at least he's honest about it.
He's going to drain the swamp.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck.
And fill it with skeletons.
Yeah. Wait, I voted for face-eating leopard guy. Why is he eating my face?
He's not eating the right people's faces.
Yeah, that's so true. Anyways.
But it did lead to some fun moments because the players embraced that level of it extremely well. I'm bad about puns, as we all know. So I basically made him I took the high points that I was going to put on some of the other characters, filed the serial numbers off, and I gave them to the bad guys.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
So the lich turned into the person that they went to for their magic items.
Yeah.
Half the group decided that instead of going for bag of holdings, they were going to go for hand bags, which are a bag of holdings made out of skeletal hands. In one particular case, he offered a favor because somebody really needed a magic item. And he said, okay, here's the thing. I'm going to need a lot of corpses for this. So if you can fill a bag this big full of corpses, I will help you. And they said, sure. And proceeded to do that. They said, well, we're going to be clearing out a ninja stronghold anyway. Solves two problems. Loot it, shove it in the bag, and move on.
Yeah.
It's really just sustainable, magic item creation.
It kind of is.
To raise your reputation with this faction, please collect 100 red flags.
Oh no.
Yeah.
I think this is sort of a demonstration of like the difference between like RPGs are like we've said over and over again, are about collaboration and sort of negotiating between all the different people at the table. And so this is an example of the negotiation collaboration. It's like if you're all on a boat on a river and you all have a paddle, you all we're all going to paddle in different directions, but then you all talk, hey, we should paddle around this giant rock and work together. That means you paddle to the left, you paddle to the right, and somehow it works together.
The Mario Party memories
Yeah,
are just too fresh.
I was thinking of Mario Party. Thank you. But then the railroading is the one person at the boat who's like, I'm going to paddle to the left. Fuck you all. I want to paddle to the left, and it doesn't matter what happens because I want to paddle to the left. And the thing is, this can be anybody at the table, and this isn't just necessarily GM to the players to the GM. It could also be player versus player because, when you're improving as you're role playing, i.e., but like, I don't know how many times I've been like role playing and then like I say, all right, my character's going to do this. And people are like, well, I'm going to do this. And well, you're not responding to what I'm doing at all. You're just doing your character shtick over and over again. Like, I'm this super cool guy who's doing super cool guy thing. Okay, well, hey, I tripped. I'm comedic. Okay, well, you're going to be comedic guy. And that's all your character is from now on. I'm never going to refer to your character as anything but comedic relief guy. And I'm like, okay, well, this is kind of one-dimensional, and
But you fuck one goat.
yeah, you fuck one go. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I don't know. That's sort of the problem. I think everyone knows to say yes, but, or yes, and, but you don't know how to proceed from there. You know what I mean?
The thing that comes after the and is supposed to interact with what you said yes to.
Yeah.
Damnedest thing.
It's building upon something, and people sort of get that first step, but they don't know to build upon it. So, I don't know.
And with the experience I've had with my groups, one of the things that I found that really works well is when you're setting the expectations at the start, I give them the start point, I give them the goal, and I let them determine how they want to get that as a group. And if we get a group consensus, good. If we don't get a group consensus, I get to try to work all of the elements into the thing as a GM.
Yeah, and that's the negotiation again. Like you're like, we're paddling. Okay, you're still paddling over there. Maybe I could work around that, and we can deal with that. But like, yeah,
And almost every group is going to end up with a leader
Yeah.
who will, okay, everybody paddle right. I'm going to paddle left. I'm going to hit that guy on the head with the paddle. And now everybody who is conscious is paddling right.
yeah. I mean, hopefully it doesn't come to that, but like,
Hopefully not, but
There's
some
a
people need
reason-
to get tagged with a paddle once.
There's a reason that, in Congress, they call them the whips.
Yikes.
So I don't know, Rob. In terms of your group, does this dynamic come out? This conflict in terms of people sort of look like railroading to like paddle to the left all the way? Or
I mean, it depends on what point in the life of the show. Because honestly, I've played so little other than the main
Orpheus
campaign
Protocol.
of the Orpheus Protocol for such a long time now. There definitely have been phases of the game in terms of that dynamic. It started with everyone very, very much on the same page, despite their characters being very different in personality and skills and things like that. Because I think that they were very interested in finding out what was going on and investigating the intrigues. And I think they were also very scared of dying.
Yeah.
And so they sort of banded together against what seemed like quite impossible odds at the time. Then one of them got real uppity when he sort of discovered what some of the limits were and like what his powers could be used to do to the narrative. But then, that was just sort of a growing pains phase. And then he figured out how to make, choices that ended up boosting all of the other players.
Okay.
With those same tools that could be used for evil, could also be used for good. And then since the end of season 2, I'm not going to be spoiling anything on here. Go listen to the Orpheus Protocol.
The
Available
Orpheus
on iTunes,
Protocol.
now available on Stitcher as
Search
of like
for
a couple days
the
ago.
Orpheus Protocol.
But sorry about
Available
that.
wherever fine podcasts
Wherever
are sold.
fine podcasts are sold, indeed. But
Your bespoke podcast. Yeah.
yeah, but since the end of season 2, there hasn't been almost like a chance for that dynamic because the events at the end shattered everything out into like a bunch of different perspectives. It's getting very Song of Ice and Fire at this point where like there are lots of POVs. And so right now each POV is just doing what that 1 or 2 or 3 characters are doing. But I'm sure we'll get back to
But that was organic character growth. Like,
Yes.
people actually had arcs and like,
Yeah,
their characters
it
changed over
made
time.
like literally at the end of season 2, it made no sense for the main party to be a party anymore.
Yeah.
And it's kind of cool. It's exciting because we get to do completely new stuff now in the same story. But the pendulum will swing back, and we'll be at that point where people's choices are going to start fucking each other over again, and we have to try not to do that.
Yeah. I mean, Bill, you talked about, Rob mentioned being on the same page, and
Yeah. Wow. Hey, heck of a segue. So, I think even like I kind of said earlier, like sort of as the guy that tries to research craft, in gaming and all of that, I think, as I was trying to tumble railroading over in my head, I was thinking about like, normally it is some sort of a social contract breakdown. And like, it's almost like treating a symptom instead of treating a disease.
Yeah.
As an approach, like even when people aren't, clearly it's not a thing a lot of people do intentionally, but like it's sort of a knee jerk treatment. So like to throw something out there as a tool to try to address that. Like, I still haven't quite gotten to the bottom of like how it works, but there's something out there called the same page tool that is for sitting down in your session 0. And it's not, per se a survey. It's more kind of a discussion starter. And it can be something to lead you in the direction of, certain games if you haven't settled on what system you're playing next. But even then, if you have, it can help you figure out if you're trying to play a square game in a round, peg hole and all of that, and just go out there and search same page tool.
Yeah. I'll try and put a link in the show notes so you can just
that is sweet. Session 0 can help a lot. On
and that kind of goes into the session
kind of an issue because for example, back to what you were saying before, David, like the I'm just gonna run off into the desert and be a tool. Like, ideally in session 0, you get your whole group together and you talk about, why are you guys making the characters that don't want to run into the desert and instead want to do a fucking story?
Yeah.
Nice.
And like, if you can get people to do that at the start, I mean, it's not foolproof, but it's going to help a lot.
Yeah.
It should at least narrow it down to the people that you should actually tell the game is on a different night.
Yeah. That's one solution. Maybe a little passive aggressive, but we're gamers. It's fine. The thing is, of course, no matter how great your session 0 is, how great your setting, same page, negotiation goes. There's the thing, the game progresses and people change and they change their minds. Like I know, Kale did sort of note, like when I play games in one of his campaigns, I have this tendency to make a wacky character at first and then halfway through start giving a shit about them. Like, oh no, I need to do a thing and have a character growth. I've only done this and
gotta get my son into a good school.
Yep. Or Bartleby is not just a murder person with the
I mean, nothing was ever taken away from the murder personhood.
Bartleby felt bad about it, He did eventually.
Okay, Ross.
But I think the problem is a lot of people in RPGs, they like, I want to do this thing, and they don't like. I feel like the process should be, you contribute something to the table, then you listen to what the other players do, and then you respond to what the other people at the table do, and then you add something new. People are just like, I want to add something new. I want to add something new. I want to add something new. They don't listen and respond to what, like, obviously they have to do what the GM is doing because that's how the story is told. But like, players like, oh man, I really, I want to get extra money so I can give it to the orphanage because they're going to go down, they're not paying their rent. They're going to
close the community center.
Yeah, they're going to close the community center. And you're like, well, what? I don't give a shit about that.
It's okay. I can break dance.
Well, I better go to the community center, see how all the kids are doing. Like, okay, whatever. Can I go back to my, crafting my sniper rifle, and like, I want to spend all the money to get, your depleted uranium bullets and like,
I'm going to level up my MMO avatar at home.
Yeah, exactly. There is this kind of thing where like, you're just not responding to what the other players are doing. And that's sort of a personal pet peeve of mine is when,
So what I'm hearing you say here is that active listening is hard and a lot of people are bad at it, which is the thing that most of us have to learn with our families or at work. So good job bringing it into our hobbies as well, Ross.
I think that
a hobby about collaboration negotiation.
I mean, I think ultimately kind of boils down to avoid not just this, but most of the problems in role-playing games that are not based solely in bad mechanics in a book. You have to have empathy and practice adult communication levels with people, and 1 out of 5 gamers can do that.
Yeah.
So this is why it keeps coming up.
Yeah.
It's going to fall on a couple of people in any given control group of gamers to sort of drag the other ones out of the cave into the sunlight where we teach them agriculture. And that's just the way it is.
And the Play-Doh metaphor?
Yeah.
Man, this is getting too real for me.
I just drove a long way. My brain doesn't work. It's fine.
Oh, that's cool.
It's fine.
I've got to say, too, that different groups will have a couple of those leaders, and sometimes we go a different way than the DM expects, and that's where it comes into that whole yes and, yes but thing. And if you can roll with it the right way, that's also the thing. There's got to be a little bit of flexibility. I've got to share a quick little anecdote on that. We were playing Cyberpunk. We were told that we basically need to take this other corporation out of a competition. And the way to do that was going to involve blackmailing their CEO. So we have the answer to it is blackmail. And at first we had a couple of guys in the group that said, well, why don't we set up like an Ocean's 11 style heist? We'll break into his place. We'll steal his computer. We'll let the netrunner do the thing. After figuring out that that was going to be a series of really, really hard rolls, one of the other players said, why don't we just seduce the guy? The DM was less amenable to that at first, made a couple of rolls and said, okay, well, it's going to be harder than you guys think because he's got different proclivities. You're not going to be able to send in your solo with an appearance 10 and a seduction skill. She's actually off the table. He likes them big, burly, and muscular. And so this is the point where the entire group turns to me playing the medic. The only guy in the group that is not cybered to all get out. And they said, okay, Ivan, what are you going to do here? You want me to call Boris the Soviet love hammer? No, we want you to be Boris. My day has come.
Yeah.
So it also boils down to, are your players willing to buy in to the crazy things? And if you've got players who are willing to jump in, who are good game and willing to take the risks and willing to take the steps.
Thanks, Dan Savage.
You're welcome. It makes a difference. And that's how we get off the railroad or get back on it, however you want to view it. We still ended up getting the blackmail, just not in the way we originally planned. We still ended up advancing the plot, although not in the way the DM originally intended, but it worked. And I think that that's the most important part of it is, can you get to the goal?
Yeah.
And can you, as a group of players, agree that, okay, we're going to go off the rails on this. We've got a plan. It's just crazy enough. It might work. The whole thing only worked because everybody in the group yes-anded it and found ways to make it work.
I mean, the thing is that this is not like a binary thing. It's either acceptable or it's either good gaming or railroading. There's kind of a spectrum of acceptability. Like it's like if one player's like, I'm going to do this game thing, but it's not like a game breaking or like it's going to totally derail everything. Then like, okay, sure, go do your thing. Your character's always a cook and he likes making pancakes. All right. I mean, that could be a little quirk. If we're playing Cthulhu or D&D, I guess you're just pancake guy. That's fine. But like,
and you know what? We can plan with that.
If it's just a little side thing. But if it's like, I'm going to shoot everybody so I can steal their money and open up a Waffle House. I'm like, what the that's
Waffle House franchise doesn't cost that much.
Well, I mean, they're pretty
really
poor
doesn't.
characters. This is starting level Shadowrun characters.
Look, we decided that we were going to go with your pancake plan. We're going to use your flapjacks for the thing.
Yeah.
We're buying in part way. You got to beat us.
Well, and that's the test then, right? Like, is the person mad about that or are they happy about that? Because if they can accept their crazy thing being used in a way that everyone has fun, then they're not really the problem.
Yeah.
The problem is when
fun is a zero-sum game.
Yeah. The problem is when either consciously or unconsciously they don't want anyone else having fun, and like that happens.
That's the point where you say, Flappy Jack, the game is now on Blurns Day.
Yeah. I mean, I think probably the trickiest thing again is really tone, and I think probably the hardest thing is like you want to do a serious game, and then there's just like even people aren't necessarily intentionally sabotaging the game, but people make jokes, and there's a degree of acceptable jokes and stuff like that. But then like people, maybe it's just pushing a little too far one way or the it's like Yeah. Or then again, or of course, there's also the opposite. You're doing a lighthearted game, and it's like, well, my character's entire family was butchered, and then I'm going to torture, so I have to torture this guy, and I have to describe it. And
I mean, at some point, you're doing Spider-Man Noir though, and it actually works in the comedy. But, like I feel like that's something that the GM can sort of bend back into the correct spectrum.
Yeah, but how do you deal with like you're trying to do a serious game and everyone's being like not taking it seriously enough?
God,
I mean, especially for the Orpheus Protocol, because that's supposed to be.
Make my players fear me in real life. I don't know. I've not had that much problem with it because I
good players
vet the hell out of people before they come on the show, because it takes so long to record that and edit it and produce it and stuff. I'm not gonna cut around 900 bad jokes. I will murder you. But I mean, I have run into stuff like that at conventions.
Oh yeah, sure.
And I don't think my strategy is necessarily the best one, but I more or less just do the puppy is doing something bad.
Break out the spray bottle?
No. Like in a puppy class situation where there's multiple puppies, you give the attention to the puppies that are doing the good things.
Oh yeah.
And like you just minimal engagement with the bullshit. And in a group setting, especially when it's not like friends who are going to be like making alliances against the GM, in like a convention setting, if it's a bunch of strangers, like it works pretty well. Like whoever's doing the good thing that helps the story, like the GM, you light up a little extra, you turn to face them a little more.
Yeah, and you sell the other players.
More or less. Like, you got to control it. You don't just completely ostracize them, but, like, you do dial up the enthusiasm for things that don't suck. And that has a pretty powerful subconscious effect, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, people can definitely pick up on that. I know. I've done that a couple times at cons when it's not even like an intentional strategy. It's like, oh god, that guy's annoying me. I'm just
This is especially something I go to as my first move if a player and again, this is only something that would ever happen at a convention. But like if a player would make a joke or reference that is inappropriate or would make certain groups of people uncomfortable or something like that, or make me like privately want to beat them up, like I'll just ignore it and engage very actively with other things that are happening and try to teach them that that's not going to get a reaction out of anybody. Because once you've done the okay, we need to stop, we need to talk about blah, 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 like either they're going to be combative about it or they're not, and it's still going to be unspeakably awkward for the rest of the time. And like, if it's going to keep going, that's what you have to do. That's just what it is. But if you can subtly steer away from it and have it not come back, you have a chance of salvaging a decent game out of it.
Okay. Yeah. That's really good advice, especially for the one shots and con game, pickup games.
You never know what the hell's going to happen.
Yeah. No joke. Bill, any thoughts on that?
I mean, other than Rob stealing all the good points.
Sorry.
No.
Well, yeah. I mean, he drove all this way. He gets to do that.
It's true.
That's his privilege.
I mean, I think especially like in the discussion of terms of tone, I almost want to say it's like an aim for 70% kind of thing. Like you have the place you really would want the game to land, but as long as you're getting 70% of that, you're probably in good shape because at the end of the day, like, for most of us, like Rob, I get that, your situation's a little different, sort of play testing this game and eventually like building up your marketing for it. But like, it is still a hobby for the most part.
Yeah.
And like people it's going to be their Steam blow off time. And I know there are like those mythical like groups out there that are deep immersion role players that like, seriously do tone. And I guess God bless them. But like, I think back, I mean, Armitage was sort of the most recent thing that I did a whole lot of, and man, that was depressingly far away. But at any rate, real life intervenes. But like, I was really happy with where that landed because there was a lot of humor to it. Yes. But like, I still think it managed to, hit the like bleakness and confusion that I was going for.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
People in real life make jokes.
Yeah.
And real life is bleak and horrible.
Exactly.
So they're not necessarily mutually exclusive. Again, it's a social contract thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. David?
Well, what I was going to say on it is when you were saying you don't want to edit out 100 bad jokes, what if they're jokes that fit the theme? I know that I'm bad about gallows humor. It's one of the things that my family resorts to when we hit that moment of laugh or cry. We're going to be here all day. We'd rather laugh. And sometimes it's you need to laugh at the crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I also know that it's not something that everybody gets along with. I joke about how I've got the David Normal People Don't blank list. And it's an actual list because I have to remind myself at times that there are things in my life that are not things in everybody else's because weird shit happens.
I think that happens to everybody. Like, I'm surprised when people don't know what a coelacanth is, but I mean, maybe that's just me.
I was surprised too. God, Caleb and Spencer are going to hate my guts if they ever hear this. But
Fortunately,
You're
you'll
pretty safe.
already have been, back in Indiana by the time this sees air.
that's
And if Spencer can't figure out YouTube, I bet podcasts are going to blow his mind.
safely back in the cloud of meth.
Well,
You haven't really left the cloud of
yeah.
No, that's
It's
true.
just a different kind of
Yeah, there's a slightly different back end to it.
Yeah,
where
the
it hits your
boutique, the
throat.
bouquet
Yeah.
is different.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a matter of degree. Like there's an acceptable level of joking, and there's the unacceptable level of joking. So yeah,
Something I can't believe I didn't already think of is like
yeah,
Session 0, we've talked about. It's super great. And not just for this. Obviously there are like 9 million reasons you need to do it. But check in with your players.
yeah.
Like,
I
every
it.
few sessions, if you're doing a long running campaign, like every handful of sessions has gone by, just have a rundown with all the players about how things are going, how they feel about what's going on, things that they're hoping for or whatever. And then also go back around and talk to them individually. Because if they have a problem with each other, they probably won't actually say in the group.
Yeah,
Because again, it's like being confrontational is uncomfortable.
yeah,
And maybe they're comfortable just coming to the GM and like hopefully you can come up with a way of like smoothing things over.
yeah.
Just check on the health of your campaign every once in a while.
No,
because
yeah.
the earlier you catch a trend that is going to cause people stress or make it less fun for them, the easier it's going to be to fix it.
Yeah. That's a really good point, especially in individual check-ins. I tend to do that just by chatting with other players. I don't like, and also they ping me too. But yeah, especially if you're trying to go for the serious game or something like that. Like, any thoughts on that, David, Bill? Good.
Well, and even in a non-serious game, you can have very serious social dynamics going on where like every time player A is trying to like do a comedy bit, player B is twisting it in a way that player A doesn't like.
Yeah, there's that.
Something
Yeah,
like
not
that.
responding, and like there's like, oh, you're doing a funny thing. Oh, you like pancakes? Well, I'm going to spit in them. I'm going to spit in your pancakes every time. I'm going to.
Oh no, my pancake.
Yeah, well, it's like, why are you being a jerk like that? Why can't you let him do his pancake shtick? He just wants to do his pancake shtick. Just fucking let him. Like, Jesus.
Let Tom be a frog.
Yeah.
Do you know how much money I've spent on these artisan stirrups? I was going to put poisonberry on those.
Yeah, exactly.
Poisonberry.
I mean, again, if it's like, I want to be a super rich werewolf who kills people, I'm like, okay, all right. And I want to just make the game about me killing people who anger me and being super rich and not anything else, maybe.
And if it's,
Yeah.
that for 5 minutes per 2-hour session,
All right, yeah,
probably
that's
tolerable.
Yeah, but if it's like, well, can me being rich solve this problem without me doing anything? Okay. No? Yeah. No, that's a good point.
Strictly hypothetically speaking.
Yeah.
Strictly hypothetical.
This sounds like one of those strictly hypothetical things.
I mean, ideally, you could make the what is it, dollar bill cannon? It just fires bundles of money at your problems until they go away.
That's capitalism.
Well, that's capitalism for a very small percentage.
Yeah. Yeah, kind of an outsized influence, though. But we call it the Bezos factor. Anyway,
But anyway, what about his dick?
I did see a story where they considered buying AMI just to find out who was leaking the data, because it would have been basically a rounding error to
That's so fucked up.
yeah.
Right?
Anyway, yeah. Any final thoughts on railroading? I think we
Don't do it.
Yeah, don't do it.
That's bad.
Listen to the other players, respond to what they're doing, and then contribute something. Don't just make it about like the thing you want to do. It's about synthesis between everybody's.
Yeah, if you
Ooh, the Hegelian dialect.
Yeah.
if you don't think that there's anything wrong with the dynamic, think real hard about what you're doing, because it might be you. Like that sounds like a joke, but it's actually true. Like
Yeah.
make sure that think about what you're doing and reflect on it, and make sure that when other players or the GM are throwing things out there that they seem to care about and want something out of, that you're helping it be good.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rob. All I needed was a reason to, engage my social anxiety when things are going.
Glad I could help.
And also got to say, too, sometimes you should rethink which one to go along with and which one to not. Mm-hmm. But sometimes those can lead to moments of gold. If you can make the DM roll his eyes but get everybody at the table to laugh along with you, sometimes go with the crazy.
Yeah. I mean, there was a good example in our rain campaign, the Galaxy 2, where we had this dramatic, serious moment, and then I made a pretty kind of dirty joke. It was blue, but like everybody bust out laughing, and Caleb was like, "Oh, well, the ruins won't." But like Jason was like, "No, our characters are all mercenary dudes. Like if we get too serious, somebody's gonna make that kind of joke like that. That was just like." Good role playing. I'm like, yeah, no, I totally meant to do that. That was totally my intent, but it did work out. So
Exactly.
yeah, cool. Well, I hope this gives everybody something to think about. And when we get back, we'll have some shout outs and anecdotes. Woo! And we're back. I have no idea what kind of music I'm going to put in there, but
Yes, you do.
Yeah, it could be synthwave. It doesn't have to be vaporwave.
Vaporwave?
I just said
It's going to
synthwave.
end in wave.
Okay, well, maybe, probably, yes.
It's certainly not going to be Korean boy band music.
No, it's not.
If you think that into the universe hard enough, maybe you'll get your way.
Oh, no, it does exist. I know
They
it
have a
exists.
machine that makes those.
Oh, I just mean in terms of the actual podcast.
Oh, yeah. No.
Anyway, so we have shout outs. And so I will start out first off with a sci-fi novel I read, Sleeping Giants, which is part of a trilogy, which is about people finding parts of a giant robot that aliens left there, and then like putting it together and figuring out how to use it. And it's written in the series as a series of interviews with some weird anonymous government fixer guy who's super connected, super Illuminati-esque, and he's just interviewing the scientists and pilots and everything, and sort of like some after action reports and diaries. But it moves along interesting pace, and it's got some interesting sci-fi stuff, and it's about giant robots. So I mean, what's not to like? I mean, it's only part one, so they didn't have it fight another giant robot or monster yet. They gotta have they have to have something for part
build-up
two.
is coming.
Yeah, the build-up's coming. So yeah, I quite enjoyed it. Let's see here, David. You had a board game you're looking forward to, right?
As a matter of fact, yes, it's due to be delivered any day now. In fact, it might be waiting for me at home right now.
Ooh.
So the game is called The Faceless. The basic premise of it is that a little boy has gotten lost in the mysterious, spooky woods that are totally not eldritch horror filled. They're eldritch horror filled. And his little friends
spoilers.
are going to be going into these woods to try to find him. Now, the thing that appealed to me most about it wasn't necessarily the premise as much as it was the way that the game is played. So you move your pieces around a hex map. And when I say around a hex map, I don't mean on it. I mean around the edges. And as you move the child that you control, there are magnets in the base of each of the kids that alter the point of the compass in the middle of the board. And wherever the compass points, the compass moves. So you basically have to move and turn your piece in such a way to get the compass to point the way that you want it to go and not run into the possible eldritch horrors out there. Haven't actually played it because it hasn't arrived yet, but I am super looking forward to it just because the mechanics of it seem so different than anything I've done before. This isn't a roll the dice, draw the card, do the thing. It's no, control the magnet. See if you can make it point the way you want it to just by angling magnets. So I think it's going to be fun.
Yeah, no, I can't wait to try it out.
Very interesting.
Bill.
Yeah. So, okay. Working in the, kind of analyst space as I do, I have a lot of, time where it's nice to have something to kind of distract me while I'm doing mathy and computery kind of work. So I end up hunting down YouTube channels, and I remembered recently on one rather bored day that I didn't know enough about industrial musicals. So I typed that into the search engine and found a channel, pretty much the only one that had anything to say about it, called the Oddity Archive, which I then dove deeper down that rabbit hole. And it's a guy's web show where he does like 15 to 30 minute, sort of quasi-documentary, quasi-riff tracks segments on various artifacts of the early and mid television age. Like his first episode is about the Max Headroom incident.
Yeah.
His second episode is a tribute to the emergency broadcast system, etc., etc.
Oh my God.
That is extremely my jam.
Yeah. It's essentially like the same content that goes into Everything is Terrible, but instead of strictly playing it for comedy, he's also like giving background details and like, here's what you should know about it.
Informative, not absurdist. Yeah.
Why not both?
All right. Touche. Rob, you had a video game.
I do have a video game. I'm going to shout out to Grim Dawn. I'm sure some of you have heard of it. Some of you probably haven't. It is the Diablo 3 that never was. It's very much more a spiritual successor to Diablo 2 than Diablo 3 ended up being. But it is exceptionally dark in its story. There's a bit of cosmic horror in there on top of the normal medieval horror, dark fantasy business that you would expect. You get to dip into 2 classes if you want to, which in that kind of game is nuts.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a whole layer of customization on top of those 2 classes and their talent trees where you go out into the world and collect these things that let you unlock these special new abilities that augment your other abilities that are not tied to class in any way. So, like, the depth of customization that's possible is frankly absurd, which is what you want, of course.
Yeah.
And they've kept it up pretty well in terms of expansions and stuff. There's another one coming out pretty soon. And it is just glorious, kill normally impossible to even think of levels of monsters, and it gets to the point where you can't even fucking tell what's happening on the screen, and it's great. It's very much like just an updated, nicer looking, slightly deeper and nastier Diablo 2. That, not that I have time to play games that much, but like it is exactly like the kind of thing that is perfect for like relaxing.
Ooh.
Actually, since we're having a lot of metaphor stealing tonight, I heard a great one on a YouTube channel called Girlfriend Reviews that's about video games that speaks exactly to that. She called those sort of moments Christmas light diarrhea.
Yeah. Eventually you get that, except
All
it's
the colors.
with eldritch horrors.
Nice.
Yeah, that you're
speaking of eldritch horrors, the Netflix Godzilla anime released the conclusion to its trilogy, and does it have some cosmic horror? It turns out humanity and the aliens couldn't kill Godzilla because it's Godzilla, but they're like, you know what could? Ghidra, if Ghidra was also Azathoth, and it's fucking crazy. There were plot twists I didn't predict. Like I didn't see that coming, and it was great. Like, it's got some incredible scenes in it. It's also the most anime like final struggle ever, because it's like this. Oh god, I don't want to go too much into it without spoiling it. Like part 1 and part 2 of this anime series are just setups for part 3. It's also very like Eclipse phase. Like it's really a discussion of like, can we have civilization, or is civilization going to inexorably lead to our own destruction? Which is kind of the thesis of Godzilla.
Yeah.
We create
Full
our
circle.
we create our own destruction. And nuclear weapons symbolized as Godzilla.
I'm watching that the moment I get home.
Yeah, no, it's oh god, this anime was made for me. I just slide right into that hole in the mountain, and it's great. Let's see here. Let's see who. David, you wanted to talk about a show?
I do indeed.
Yeah.
I think that playing in a number of these wonderful, wonderful Caleb Stokes campaigns with the Conspiramids and connecting the dots in the investigation has prepared me for a certain piece of reality TV, which I want to talk about not because of the performances involved, but because of the figuring out who is behind the mask. So I've been watching The Masked Singer, and I've just got to say I've got more rings on my right hand than I've got incorrect guesses. And I've got less rings on my left hand than I've got correct ones.
And the train leaves the station at 55 miles an hour east.
So
yeah, sorry.
I've been particularly proud of the fact that here I am in an office full of people watching this weekly show, and I managed to get people on board with it just by showing them my Conspiramids and connecting the yarn and just kind of saying, well, no, they said this on this episode and they said this on this episode. So therefore, the person behind that mask has to be Tori Spelling. Tori Spelling! And then LaToya Jackson. So, yeah, the only one I have missed so far is the very first reveal because he's a sports baller and I know nothing of the sports ball. Apparently, he runs with the foosball for the Pittsburgh team.
Yep.
That involves steel in some way?
Yeah.
I don't know.
All right.
But I'm sure he is extremely famous within that field, but that is not my niche, and I am gloriously unaware of it.
Investigating cults will help you appreciate reality TV even more.
Well, to the point where with one particular reveal, I was laughing because of the fact that I called it 3 weeks before, and one of the judges, Ken Jeong, actually had this particular actress, activist, comedian on the show as his sister, and he had no idea who it was behind the mask, but I did. Ooh. So that I call that a tiny victory. I've also outsmarted Jenny McCarthy at every turn, but that's kind of like punching a 5-year-old. It's not a hard reach to be smarter than Jenny McCarthy.
You believe that vaccines work. So
no, I don't believe vaccines work.
Yeah,
I know they do because I believe in science.
Touche. Good point. So she is a horrible garbage person. Anyway, I want to mention a board game I finally got to play after backing the Kickstarter and probably having it taunting me for over a year. Gloomhaven.
Oh my!
Yeah, we finally broke it out and assembled, got all the things, punched out all the things out of the things, and we played the first scenario, and we won barely. And we used the Gloomhaven Helper app, which is available on all platforms.
A wise choice.
Yeah, it helped a lot. Have you played it, Rob?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it's really fun, and we already put our money together to get the broken token organizer because I was foolish enough to think 2 tackle boxes would be enough for all the components.
Brave man.
Brave, foolish man.
Broken token does God's work.
Yeah.
Yes,
so we'll be playing a lot more of it, hopefully. And also, if you play it, get the app. Do some research before you open the box. There's on the community, there's a 2-page, 27 point. Here's what you do to set up. Don't let this deter you from the game. It's fun, but they're 27 points.
Ross,
yeah.
Call me when you unlock the bard.
Yeah. Well, we don't know it's a bard. It's a music note class.
Okay. Call me when you unlock the bard-ish.
Yeah.
It's totally a bard.
No, it's a Back to Corbin.
Oh. This is
Pole
not.
arm joke.
Yeah.
This isn't going to be a Bohemian Ear Spoon thing
Damn
again, is it?
That was the name of my ska band. Anyways, Bill, speaking of games, there's a book you want to talk about.
Yeah, that just came out of Kickstarter, so it should be going into general availability. The Angry GM wrote a book called Game Angry. I've spoken about his stuff before on here. Again, if you don't like the shtick, I understand, but if you can get past the shtick, there's actually good advice in there.
Yeah.
And this is a book of it. So if you would rather consume it in dead tree form than interwebs form, then like me, you are a shameless consumer whore, and I have recommended this thing to you.
And I feel like the shtick is a little calmed down in the book compared to
Fair.
yeah.
Oh, have you read it too?
Yeah, I've got it.
Okay, yeah. I've read some of his stuff. I like on his blogs, but
Yeah.
I don't follow him regularly because
I mean, also the shtick has calmed down over time.
Yeah.
Like now it's just the first 100 words are going to be angry and ranty and to no specific point, and then content.
I no longer have the energy to keep up this facade.
I mean, his article about the 8 kinds of fun is one of like the most useful things
Oh,
for
yeah, yeah.
games I've ever
Yes.
seen.
Oh man,
Yeah.
so good.
It's certainly helped inform my GMing theory.
It's really good.
Yeah. And I
Smart
think,
guy.
Yeah. I think we're pretty much caught up on
Wears
shout
a
outs.
mean Sailor Jupiter costume.
Yes. I have seen.
So anecdotes. Since Rob is our special guest, since he came from the farthest away, do you have any anecdotes you'd like to tease us with from the Orpheus Protocol?
Yeah, there's a couple things. One of the big ones is that I, like many people who run actual play podcasts, do a Patreon tier where people can come and play games with me.
Yeah.
And I do one of those like, okay, there's a limited number of slots and it's an ongoing campaign, blah, 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 blah. And it just so happens that the people who just, I didn't choose them, I didn't interview them or anything. It's just who's giving me the money. All 4 of them are shockingly good role players who have good sound equipment. So we just are recording everything that we're playing. And that's going to be going up as bonus content for backers of certain level.
Nice.
Recently we did a mostly standalone arc on the show called the Storage arc. We're not in it anymore, but it's a recent one. There are a couple callbacks to earlier stuff that will make it better if you've listened to the whole show. But they were the players on it. I wanted to do an arc with sort of everyman characters who weren't like super connected in this giant occult conspiracy and like just were running into a terrible thing. Kind of the first 10 minutes of an X-Files episode in short role-playing arc form. And it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Completely shifting the power level and the perspective that the characters had in a completely different group dynamic. And I can't wait for you all to hear it. And if you like what you hear, sometime in the near future, we're going to start releasing like the whole campaign that they're doing.
Ooh. So something to look forward to for all you Orpheus Protocol fans. I just like saying the Orpheus Protocol, Anyways.
It really sticks in the mind. The Orpheus Protocol. The Orpheus Protocol.
The Orpheus Protocol.
Just don't look back.
Orpheus Protocol.
So David, any anecdotes from any of the games you've been playing outside of? Rain. We have finished the Rain campaign. No
yes.
spoilers because it's something to look forward to. It was quite dramatic.
I do have to share one from the Starfinder campaign.
Sure.
Because it's too whackety schmackety do not to.
Okay.
So our crew was tasked to kidnap a unicorn from a planet.
Yeah.
And so we figured out ways to make this happen. We made sure that we had the cargo space on the ship. We realized that because we're going after what is essentially a magical horse and we need to bring it back alive, that we're going to need horse tranquilizer that's been dosed up with a little bit of magic. So we used a little bit of alchemy on the horse tranquilizer to make it, what did you call it, Rob?
Alketamine.
Alketamine. And we had this sufficient amount of doses. I also have to warn that this is also about the point when the final player to our group showed up, which is Mr. Whiskey. After the players had gotten to drinking a little bit, one of the things that seemed like a good idea was when our soldier, who was mostly a grappler and grenadier, decided that there's no way that he can put the alketamine into a grenade. So we arrive. Everybody else is just loading up their needler darts and getting ready to find a way to either shoot a dart or stab the unicorn. And he immediately starts lubing up his fist.
Oh.
And internet, I gotta apologize, but he rolled a nat 20 on that, so he fisted the unicorn.
I feel like the internet is the only thing that you don't need to apologize to in this situation.
I mean,
I think this is the only time that the phrase "we fisted a unicorn" is not going to turn up on some Rule 34 site. But yeah, have you ever seen a DM laugh so hard that he can't breathe while simultaneously snapping his lead pencil in half because he can't believe you did the thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crossed off my list now. Unicorn fisting. It happened.
All right. Yeah. And
It was for the plot.
yeah, it was for the plot.
Totally for the plot.
And the greater good.
And the great, possibly remains to be unseen. But it was definitely not railroading. It was a collaboration between the GM and the players.
No, just railing.
Just railing.
So we leave
We
you
all
with that.
just kind of jumped in on that one. We just kind of
Yep.
went, okay, this is where we're going.
Yep.
Screw it. We're doing it live. Go ahead. See what happens.
So we leave you that mental image. And Rob, would you like to plug the Orpheus Protocol?
I feel like it's been said a couple times, but the Orpheus Protocol, available where fine podcasts are sold. It's the long-form campaign that what is also the beta test of the Orpheus Protocol game, which is coming to Kickstarter, hopefully in May.
Wow. So we
if
should
everything
watch
goes,
for
there's
that?
still plenty of time for things to go wrong and make it take longer than that. But this year for sure.
All right.
And hopefully sooner rather than later. We're working on it pretty hard.
Awesome. Well, we're looking forward to that. And that has been RPPR episode 164, Railroading Off the Cliff. We'll talk to you all next time.
Bye-bye.
See you.
Orpheus Protocol.
Orpheus Protocol.
Orpheus Protocol.